On November 23rd, 1957, David and Martha Shelley gave birth to a blue-eyed, blonde-haired baby boy they named after his father, David Joseph Shelley, in California. Imagine growing up in a family of movie stars, movie executives, and publishing giants in the early days of the Hollywood silver screen. To begin with, David's grandfather, George Gard de Silva, or Buddy, as he was called, was born in New York City in 1895. Buddy de Silva became one of the original songwriters during the Tin Pan Alley sheet music publishing era, and also produced dozens of Broadway shows. By 1925, he established the Birth of the Blues music series, teaming up with lyricist Lou Brown and composer Ray Henderson, writing hundreds of songs for most major motion pictures in that time. Later, Buddy was back in Hollywood under contract with Fox Studios, and by 1941 he became executive producer at Paramount Studios, writing dozens of entire film scores, which included all of Shirley Temple's biggest hits. In 1942, Buddy, with Johnny Mercer and Glenn Wallace, formed the record company Capitol Records. He proved to be one of the most prolific and gifted songwriters of his time, with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. As fate would have it, Buddy de Silva had a stepson named David Joseph, an actor in Hollywood, who would quickly become taken with a young movie starlet at Fox Studios named Martha Stewart, born in 1922. David's mother at the start of her career. She was discovered in New York while singing at the well-known Stork Club, and by 1944 she was singing in Glenn Miller's orchestra and was appearing on Broadway, acting, dancing, and singing. Her film debut took place in 1945 when she was featured in a supporting role with Perry Como in the 20th Century Fox musical Dollface.
Well, I gotta go fishing.
That's okay. I give you my permission, and I'll say, harbor, 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 on your way.
And I'll date you later in the USA.
As her film and television career flourished throughout the decades with Universal and Columbia Pictures, in 1957, Mitzi Gaynor portrayed her in the movie The Joker's Wife. This was based on her first husband, the comedian Joe E. Lewis, portrayed by Frank Sinatra.
All the way.
This is the searching story of a famous entertainer, played by Frank Sinatra with uncompromising realism and range of emotion. Mitzi Gaynor as Martha, the showgirl, who tried to catch the gold ring on the crazy merry-go-round of his life.
She later married David Joseph Shelley Sr. and settled in Reseda, California. They had 3 children, Colleen, Hope, and David. David turned out to be a chip off the old block with his theatrical and musical upbringing. He loved music and cultivated a seriously funny sense of humor that would bode him well in his future chosen profession, the music business. In the late 60s, the Shelley family moved to Sea Ranch Lakes, Florida. And by the mid-70s, after relocating several times back and forth from California, David finished up his schooling at Northeast High School in Fort Lauderdale. Although starting out playing drums, he later switched to guitar. And by 1977, he and his childhood friend Michael Cusi started Ocean Sound Studios, playing and recording with friends and musicians like Randy Bernson, to include percussion with legendary bassist Jaco Pastorius.
I remember meeting him, I guess it would have been early 80s. Him and Mike Cusi came in and they wanted to start a studio. So Ocean Sound Studio was born, and I went and joined them to help them. I named my band Ocean Sound Band. It was such a wonderful time. Dave Shelley, just color. He was all the colors all the time. The studio had its moments. We produced a bunch of people there, the good, bad, and the ugly.
As you will see, his eventual presence later on the South Florida blues scene belied a wildly eclectic journey to near stardom and back with his original versions of rock, reggae, and blues. In 1982, David Shelley joined a popular original reggae band called T-Shot, playing and producing some videos as well as opening for visiting reggae artists. By 1984, he had left T-Shawn, and his band, eventually renamed the David Shelley Band, acquired regional success, opening for reggae superstars like Dennis Brown, The Kinks, as well as Laura Branigan, Cheap Trick, Eddie Money, among many other headliners at Miami's Big Orange festivals. David was recording at Criteria and New River Studios with legendary producers whose credits included Stephen Stills, Glenn Frey, and many more. One of his songs, She's Only Rock and Roll, was distributed to regional record stores, and the radio station WSHE, FM 103.5, adopted it as their theme song. MCA Records showed interest and financed David, and by 1985, he moved to Los Angeles and signed with MCA that October.
Got signed to, the label moved away to California. We were watching him, and I guess that's where the next inspiration came to me.
David worked with co-producers Gary Getzman and Mike Picarillo, whose production credits included Smokey Robinson, Kim Carnes, the Staple Singers, and many more. Eventually, an album's worth of material was recorded, but unfortunately, MCA's poor business tactics and involvement in the indie payola scandal of 1986 caused this new record to be shelved. He took the advice of his older sister Colleen and pursued some acting opportunities and appeared in some soaps to include The Guiding Light, and later grabbing bit parts in the movie Basquiat and The New Rose Hotel, starring Christopher Walken. His career was flourishing and busier than ever, co-writing and guest starring, and he was picked up to sing on Richard Marx's hit debut album, Richard Marx. Another great song he wrote, Too Far Gone, was chosen for Roger Vadim's classic remake, And God Created Woman, with Rebecca De Mornay in 1988. He was cast in the movie as one of her band members performing his own songs. Years, he moved his new wife and high school sweetheart, Lynn Zabrowski, out to L.A. as he was pursuing his dreams. And by 1986, their daughter, Daylin, was born. Again, catching the eyes of Cher's then casting directors, he was hired for the video You Wouldn't Know Love from her Heart of Stone album. He performed with Cher at the 1988 and 89 MTV Video Music Awards shows, and for the epic video, If I Could Turn Back Time. Ron Reagan Show, the son of President Ronald Reagan, a syndicated late-night talk show.
Hi, my name is D.A. Young, and about 1992, I was hired as the music director for the Ron Reagan Show. And David Shelley was my guitar player. He was my go-to guitar player because I had played in a couple of bands prior to that with him. And so we had a blast playing on the show, and there was D.A. and Dr. Bombay.
Reagan has said that Shelley and the band were the one undeniably wonderful aspect of the show. In the early 90s, David Shelley began spending a lot of time in Santa Fe, immersing himself in the American Indian traditions and music. He joined Seventh Son with drummer and painter Darrell Vigil Gray and longtime friend Michael Tovar and bassist Charles Gasper. They performed for festivals and events such as Redstock and annually at Santa Fe's Indian Market. In 1995, Seventh Son became the Mud Ponies from the Pawnee legend. Their music has been described as high-energy blues and world beat with an edge. 1996, David Shelley was living between Los Angeles and Florida, trying to spend more time with his daughter Galen. Shelley produced and co-wrote vocalist Star Naia's Somewhere in a Dream album, which won the 2001 Native American Music Award for Best Independent Recording. In Los Angeles, Shelley and Tovar played around town with Blues Farm, a band including Jimmy Grigo from Toto's band. Coco Montoya, among the other guest stars often sitting in with the band, encouraged David to pursue a blues music career. In 2000, back in South Florida with rock star good looks and a cowboy hat, Shelley began reintroducing himself to the scene as a blues artist with American Indian and reggae roots. He joined Seminole singer-songwriter Chief Jim Billy's backing band with good friend and drummer Jeff Renza. They performed at powwows and festivals around the state and across Indian country. In 2002, David Shelley took up residence in the Alligator Alley All-Stars Band, a blues and roots supergroup performing at Alligator Alley Nightclub, a native Florida restaurant founded by bass player known as Kilmo. David Shelley has done the work, become one of the region's top blues performers. He headlined annually at the Riverwalk Blues Festival in Fort Lauderdale, one of the largest of many such events to be top billing. For the first time since the 80s, David Shelley and Bluestone were playing around South Florida. Band members included Billy Vasquez, J.P. Soares, Dave Scott, and Jimmy Powers on guitar, Jason Rosner, Elena Reed, Charles Gasperin, and Kilmo Carl Pasillo on bass. Jeff Renza, Getz Kujak, John Yarling, adding drummer Randy Sweet Potato Ridenauer and Raul Hernandez on drums, Bob Taylor, and Dean Sire on keyboards, Kelly Rucker on harmonica, among others. In 2007, David Shelley and Bluestone was chosen to represent South Florida Blues Society at the International Blues Challenge in Memphis, Tennessee, where the band was a top 10 finalist. In 2008, David Shelley put out a promotional CD called Live at O'Hara's.
For nearly 2 decades, O'Hara's Jazz and Blues Cafe has been the musician's choice for great live music. Although the days at 722 East Los Olas Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale may be numbered, the doors are still open and the house is packed. O'Hara's is and will continue to be one of Broward County's best live music venues. On Tuesday nights, you'll catch the David Shelley Band live.
Solid year and a half every Tuesday. They had also written some songs that we started to play, and original tunes. And we definitely put our stamp on everything, and it was just absolutely fun because it felt like a team. It felt like a real band that was on stage going for it. And
in April 2010. David Shelley and Bluestone won the Coconut Creek Battle of the Bands, a competition that awarded the band the opening slot for the Charlie Daniels Band at West Palm Beach's annual Sunfest. In 2011, David Shelley and Bluestone performed at the Montreal International Jazz and Blues Festival. With the band gaining popularity, it was able to raise funds from family, friends, and fans in order to be able to produce their first CD, That's My Train. Featuring all original songs by Shelley and his longtime co-writer Vincent Noonan, the lineup included Charles Gasper on bass, Dave Scott on guitar, John Yarling on drums. Additional guest musicians included J.P. Soares, D.A. Young, Michael Tovar, Liz Sharp, and Matt Calderon. The band also performed at several festivals throughout South Florida, which included the Riverwalk Blues Festival, Daytona Blues Festival, and opening for acts such as Dave Mason. In 2012, David Shelley and Bluestone continued to work the South Florida blues scene. In June 2013, David Shelley and Bluestone's second album, Trick Bag, was released on Pink Buffalo Record.
You love me, then you leave me, always wanting more. Then you're gone, just like yesterday.
Produced by Shelley, the 11-song collection featured all original songs, plus David's reworking of his grandfather's composition, Birth of the Blues. Songs from both CDs began receiving airplay in Europe and Australia, winning the Studio Album of the Year award at Severn FM, UK. In September, David, Shelley, and Bluestone won the chance to represent South Florida at the IBCs in Memphis. In January 2014, David, Shelley, and Bluestone competed in the 30th Annual International Blues Challenge in Memphis and made it to the semifinals. Rave reviews of the band's performances garnered an invitation to perform at Canada's Trois-Rivières Blues Festival. Festival the band would ever perform. With increased rotation of That's My Train and Trick Bag, Shelley caught the attention of European label Provogue Records, whose roster included major artists such as Joe Bonamassa, Robert Cray, and Government Mule. The band was offered a record deal. Only 1 hour later, David was to find out he had cancer.
Last time I saw David was here on stage at the Fillmore in Miami, where we played tonight. And whenever we were around, we were together, we'd always play. And
we both sat on stage and played Thrill Is Gone, and he sung his butt off, and he ripped the guitar.
A great spirit, great singer, great player, and just always fun to hang with. We sure miss him a lot. You know, he's one of those guys that just love to play music, and it's always great to see.
With performances at the Funky Biscuit and thousands of dollars raised, David was surrounded by fans and loved ones to support his fight against colon cancer. David had many musical peers that have something to share about him. My friend David, in one word:
passion, selfless,
Wacky,
Awesome.
Superman,
God. Not the God, a God.
magnetic, warm,
Gifted.
a bright, shining light.
Free spirit. I think of him and I think of Dwayne Allman in terms of their spirit.
He has so many musical and personal attributes.
Had a calming presence to him, you know. He was just an easygoing guy, and if things ever got too crazy, I could call him, you know.
When he go on the djembe,
and play along with me on the solos. He was so into African drumming that it was unbelievable. You know, I couldn't believe that a guy that was born here in America has so much syncopation.
He could set the mood, set the groove, and then the band would come in, and it was just a great formula.
Give folks like myself a chance, you know. Let us sit in with them. He's like very supportive of people, you know. He sees something in somebody and try and help them out.
Dave was just so colorful, man. He was full HD before there was HD.
Listen, David was an exceptional human being, period. He was a loving, caring, talented, creative, selfless, vibrant, emotional. I mean, there's not enough adjectives in the dictionary to describe David Shelley.
The reasons he was so much fun to play in a band with is he never came in and said, this is what you need to play and you need to play and you need to play. There was so much freedom within the band.
His humor, his talent, his unselfishness just made everybody around him better, and men wanted to be him and women loved him.
He was an amazing human being. He touched so many souls while he was here, musically, personally. He touched mine in a way that I'll never forget.
Funny stories? How long have we got?
So anyway, I remember a funny story about Dave and his modest, humble person that he was. And it was in Santa Fe, Mud Pony's show. We just finished Saturday night, and they had flights booked for Sunday morning to leave at 6 a.m. And it was snowing really hard. There was no room in my truck. It was full of gear. And in the back of my truck, there was gear. DA sat in the front, and the only space was a little spot for somebody to crawl into. And Dave crawled in along with this pink blanket that I so happened to have in my truck, because everybody should have a pink blanket in their truck. And I gave it to Dave, and we drove 2 hours in the snow to Albuquerque, and we get to the airport. I get out of the truck and I run to the back of the tailgate going, shit, Dave, it's been cold, and how are you faring? And I see this guy emerge from the tailgate with this pink blanket wrapped around himself going, am I pretty? And that was the beauty of it, man. That was Dave.
So David loved to tell me this story because it would make me laugh so hard, just because, of course, the way that he would tell it is that one day he and Jocko had been running around, sure, raising hell somewhere, and they stopped over at the house there in Sea Ranch Lakes, and David's parents had this piano in their living room, and they popped in, and David's mother, Martha, was there, and Jocko came in and proceeded to sit down at this piano and just started playing the most beautiful classical music one could imagine, and she just went on for about 5 minutes. And at the end, of course, David's a rocker and all this. Little did Martha know that Jocko was this brilliant, wild jazz man playing this beautiful classical music. And at the end, she goes, and darling, there is some real music, sweetheart.
Him and I wrote a song together called the Popeye Blues. And he would do that, whatever the Popeye thing is. So he wrote a melody. I mean, crazy whack stuff. And then he would end the set and do the curly shuffle.
When he first came to Florida, Dave was living in Sebastian. So Charles came to live with him in Sebastian. So I thought we were all going to live there and, wake up every day and work on songs, and we were going to be a band. And then the girl Dave was dating, they had a fight, and she threw him out. Charles and Dave split for Fort Lauderdale. I was like, no, come back!
It's too many of them, but take a first break, and he used to go with a big beer back to stage, and I'd say, hey Dave, fresh. And he goes, we used to laugh about
How has no fucking idea what he's saying. That's my best David.
Matty, I mean, he had an amazing sense of humor. And every time he called my house, I didn't know what voice I was. He had a lot of different voices he liked to do. And he rarely left a message on my machine using his own voice. If he did, I thought, wow, something's up. Something's wrong. He's like really serious. Because it was always like, what's up, Skeeter? I can't do it, but always a voice, always making people laugh. Dave was the kind of guy like the party was where he was. You know?
Yeah.
He was the party. And I think he wanted it that way.
Well, that's the funny thing about the stories about Dave is they cannot be told.
Well, I do sometimes get melancholy when I think about David, you know, like we all do. At the end of the day, when I think of David, you know, my face starts to hurt from smiling because all my memories of David are all like great, happy, funny, hilarious memories. Okay, David would just put a smile on your face no matter what.
Hi, Enrique here. I was just thinking about some of the things that Dave liked to do. And one of his favorite things to do was to practice guitar. When we were teenagers, a lot of his time was spent practicing. So much so that he would call me on a Friday or say a Saturday evening and say, "Hey, I heard there's a party over at somebody's house. I'll come pick you up. Give me about 10, 15 minutes." 45 minutes later, there's no Dave. And so I give him a call, and after many rings, he finally picks up. And I say, "Hey, I thought you were going to come pick me up." And he goes, "Oh, well, I was practicing my guitar. I forgot. I'll be by to pick you up." Okay, great. And so, you know, that's how he became the great guitar player that he was.
Speaking of funny cat, Dave had these great voices that he would throw out once in a while, especially if it involved something he really loved. So I can't help but share this with you.
First Facebook message. It was Shelley, Chief Dan George. Great sadness in my heart when I think that there are no longer parrot cakes in the 7-Elevens. It must be the end times. My heart is sad.
I wish I could call you back, Dave. I know where to find some carrot cake.
If David was going on an extended musical tour, I'd tell him,
"Here's $20, get yourself something to eat."
Good luck, go kick some ass, brother.
I was always struck by how charismatic David is on stage and as a person. He was always so generous in inviting me to sit in with him and sing, and also working with him on his CD. He was a joy to be around. He was funny, and I'll miss him. He's irreplaceable.
Don't drink the water, man.
Until we meet again, my friend.
I love you. Have fun. I'll see you when you get back.
If Dave was hitting the tour, I'd say, "Dave, get me a gig." Now I'm quoting our old buddy, Jocko. And you know, imagine Dave and Jocko together with a few of us. I mean, it was just, those were crazy, wonderful times. Great times.
Kick some ass. A fascinating story about this talented, charismatic musician, friend, and father. He was and will remain an inspiration to us all to be the best person we can be and to pursue our inner truth. He gave us his music, made us smile and laugh, and kept us coming back. He was our very own living legend, and yes, a Superman.
You can't find a line to get you through a crowd cloudy day. The stars ain't shining bright. Feel like you lost your way. When the candle that led you home burns so very far away, you got to let your soul shine, just like my daddy used to say. Used to say, soul shine better than sunshine, better than moonshine, and damn sure better than rain. People don't mind, I'll get this way sometime. Got to let your soul shine, shine until the break of